Thank you for tuning in to the Simple Sophisticate podcast, the show that is part of the Simply Luxurious Life online destination, cultivating true contentment, the art of living a life of quality over quantity. Visit the blog, The Simply Luxurious Life, at our simplified URL, tsll.co or thesimplyluxuriouslife.com to find the show notes for each podcast episode, as well as much more weekly content to elevate your everyday and deepen your contentment. From a Monday motivational post, recipes, videos of the cooking show series, style and decor inspiration, French and British inspired content, and readers' favorite regular weekly post, This and That, which is posted each Friday morning. Now to today's episode. Welcome to the Simple Sophisticate podcast, where intelligent living is paired with signature style. I'm your host, Shannon Ables. And whether you're listening on your commute, exercising, working in the garden, or sitting down with a hot cup of tea or a café au lait, thank you for tuning in. Let's get started. Welcome to episode 324 of the Simple Sophisticate podcast. Welcome to March. And oh my goodness, do we have a lot of catching up to do, because last week was a very busy week with regards to the Simply Luxurious Life's new book being launched. And I'm excited because Francophiles, oh my goodness, again, more good news. Not only is there good news with regards to the book, but there is a petit plaisir for Francophiles today. And if you've been following me on Instagram, you might know what I'm going to be talking about. Anyway, let's get first to what this episode is about. We're going to talk about how to turn the ordinary days, ordinary moments, supposedly ordinary moments, into extraordinary moments, into an extraordinary life. So I'm going to share with you today 13 ideas for being extraordinary at the ordinary. And then this week's petit plaisir is an in-depth look at a news series on BritBox. So it brings in, yes, something for Anglophiles, but also definitely something for Francophiles. I can't say any more or I will ruin it. So stay tuned as I'll talk about it in depth at the end of this episode. But first, I would like to express my gratitude. Last week, the Simply Luxurious Life's third book was officially released out into the world. The paperback and hardback copies became available for purchase. And in so doing, you all, listeners of the show, readers of the blog, took the book to number 1 in the category of new releases for French travel books. And not only did you take it to number 1 on the first day, March 1st, when the paperback was finally available at the end of the week. Oddly enough, I put them in the system at the same time within 5 minutes of each other, but the hardback became available first, and then the paperback 3-4 days later. When the paperback became available this past Friday on the 4th, it went back to number 1 again in new releases for travel in France, or France travel. And I just want to say thank you. I am so excited. I shared this in a video and on a couple moments as well. I'm also this book is more personal, but it's also more directly applicable in a concrete form, as well as an aspirational, inspirational form for you as readers. And it's a daily meditation book. So there are 366 entries for every single day of the year. Plus, and you all will recognize this, on every single entry, I share a petit plaisir. Every single petit plaisir I share is something I personally enjoyed and savored and want to recommend over the past 2 or 3 years. Those are things I actually partook in. And then I take you to the blog in a post that will take that particular entry or that petit plaisir a little bit further and more in depth. Every single month has a theme with regards to how to reach your true contentment. And that is what with regards to the title, The Road to Le Papillon, Daily Meditations on True Contentment is all about. Le Papillon is conceptually the idea of true contentment. How do we reach that? How do we maintain it? How do we strengthen it so that it's part of our every single day? So the book is now available, audiobook. I'm editing that right now. I've taped all the chapters. There are 500 pages, 12 chapters, so it's going to take me a bit to get through the editing, but it's coming. So the audiobook is coming. The ebook will be available on the 22nd of March. And if you purchase your hardback copy today, so the 7th, it could be in your hands by the first week of April. It takes a little bit longer for hardback copies to print, but paperback copies can get to you lickety-split in just a couple of days. So if you're interested, the book is available, and I am so excited to share it with you. I'll provide a link to a post with all the details about the book, as well as that 15-minute video. Norman and I sit in the mudroom and share an excerpt and walk you through the book a little bit. But be sure to check it out. And if you have the book or it has arrived at your house and you want to capture a moment of your true contentment, of a moment where you just find pause and peace, feel free to email me that picture or post it on Instagram. I'm putting together a detailed post that will go live on the blog the week of April 10th. And your image and description will be included if you send it my way by then. All right, we have a lot to talk about. The book that I just talked about is called The Road to Le Papillon, Daily Meditations on True Contentment. And a lot of what we're going to talk about in today's episode deals with just that, how to elevate our everydays. How do we find this deep, genuine, grounded sense of steadiness in our ordinary days, which are most of our days, and make them extraordinary. So let's talk about it. 13 ideas for being extraordinary at the ordinary. I want to begin with a quote from Henry David Thoreau, but maybe not the one that you might be thinking I'm going to share. Quote, "Since most of us spend our days doing ordinary tasks, the most important thing is to carry them out extraordinarily well." End quote. Let me paint a picture for you. It's morning, early in our house at Le Papillon here in Bend, Oregon. Norman has finished his breakfast, served in the mudroom, which is adjacent to the kitchen, and I began toasting my steel-cut oats. The clanking of pans being chosen for the 2-egg omelet, the whisk of the eggs in the mixing bowl provide the soundtrack of our mornings, and Norman finds his way onto the rug in front of the stove to enjoy his daily dental chewy. An ordinary moment that happens every single morning, and to me, it is extraordinary. I wanted to share that moment with you because, as some of you know, if you follow me on Instagram, occasionally I will show exactly what Norman does as I described there, enjoying his chewy in front of the stove on the rug. But those moments, that's what I live for. That's what I've been trying to cultivate in every single home I've lived in, and especially now with my home that I call Le Papillon here in Bend, Oregon. How do I create that with the energy, with the structure of the home, with its organization? How do I enable those moments, encourage, support, create space for those moments? Because those are extraordinary, ordinary moments. Here's another quote. Very simple. Be extraordinary at the ordinary. And this is from a meditation teacher that I follow on Headspace, Andy Puttycombe. But when he said this, it's a simple statement, but it's a key component into being mindful, into being present. One of the common refrains I heard from the Simply Luxurious Life readers and listeners of this podcast over the past 2 years was, while disheartened and pained by the reason for the slower pace of life due to the pandemic, was that it was in fact a pace they appreciated. No longer did they have to fight back or expend energy to explain why indeed the slower pace suited them and nourished them. And now that our lives and schedules and expectations are beginning to pick up steam, and the ability to pursue, travel, and experience those unique and intriguing occasions we've longed for, as we were unable to engage with them for some time, as they begin to return, the importance of choosing our pace in our everydays and how we hold ourselves in our everydays, having seen the difference in ourselves and our lives, there's no better time than to continue what was working or to fine-tune it so as to improve how we go about living in the ordinary moments. Often the word ordinary connotes a humdrum energy, an energy not desired or seen as inferior, especially when we think of its relationship to the word extraordinary. However, all ordinary means is that it, whatever it is commonplace. And for our purposes in today's episode, ordinary simply refers to the ability to have a day without strife, to tend to a job or a task, to make money, so that we can live our lives, to eat our daily meals, and move about our home and community, engaging with our family and coworkers and neighbors, as they too move about a schedule, similarly including the same elements. So for our purposes, that is what ordinary means. Okay, so we all have these days. We have responsibilities. We have relationships. We need to eat. We need to engage and get along with each other. So why I gravitated to this quote with regards to Annie Petitcombe, be extraordinary at the ordinary, is because at its core, we are choosing to focus on what is necessary. And so thereby we keep those necessities in our days, eliminate what weighs down or expends energy unnecessarily, and thus we are choosing to focus on quality over quantity, which is, as you know, a core premise of living simply luxuriously. So yeah, it definitely gravitated toward that quote when I first heard it. Now on today's show notes, if you take a peek at the show notes, I've included a couple pictures actually just from this weekend of ordinary moments that just elevated the everyday. One of them is of the gladiolas that I had in my mudroom. I purchased them last week. Today, so a week later, I've been recutting the stems and giving them fresh water. They are in more full bloom than ever, and they'll probably be like that for another week. Nothing extraordinary about the space, nothing extraordinary about the flowers. It's just that we pay attention. We put them in a spot that makes us smile, brings a touch of color, a touch of Mother Nature to our home. Another scene is simply daffodils on their last legs, but still looking beautiful. A cup of tea, just the simple reminder to slow down, see the beauty, see the color contrasts, and just something so simple just elevates that every day as you spend time in your home. Here's another example. I'm going to just verbalize this one to you from my life that makes an example of making the ordinary extraordinary. As I type this particular episode, I was working on it yesterday. It is early morning at Le Papillon. Norman is snuggled up next to me, softly snoring, and the house begins to warm up while the classical music plays softly, providing a gentle easing into the day. The day, by objective definitions, is ordinary, but in this moment it feels extraordinary. The companionship and good health of my pup, a home and thus a roof over my head to keep me warm and safe, the means, my computer, to do my work well, and the beauty of art, the music, to lift the day, yet keep me calm. How exactly do we elevate the ordinary to the status of extraordinary? Start with how you move through your everydays. And I tried to exemplify that in the example there. How do you move through your days? You have to get work done. You have to, wake up in the morning, get your day going. What's your environment like? How are you moving through your day? Rushed, steady, aware, with space, as we described in an episode earlier this year, with enough white space to catch your breath, to focus, to appreciate. While Henry David Thoreau's quote that I shared to begin today's episode is less known, it partners well with the quote that immediately springs to my mind and is more widely recognized, and is actually a mantra that I display in my office. In fact, I'm looking at it right now. It's in front of my desk. As a way to ground me. I change the pronouns, of course, and I will do so here in my reading. And here it is, quote, I have learned this, at least by my experiment, that if one advances confidently in the direction of her dreams and endeavors to live the life which she has imagined, she will meet with a success unexpected in common hours, end quote. The awesomeness of life happens in the everydays, in the common hours, as Thoreau describes. And guess what? The supermajority of the days of our lives are everydays, are common hours. Therefore, we have so many opportunities to make them extraordinary. So let's break it down a bit further. I want to share with you a list of concrete practices to incorporate into how you live in your everydays to welcome the extraordinary to be experienced. Number 1, understand the power of presence, and then hold yourself in the present moment each day, each moment. 2, learn the skill of savoring. Doing so is one way that will hold you in the present. And this is something we talked about in this past episode 323. So if you want to learn how to truly savor, be sure to listen to the last episode. Number 3, celebrate and appreciate all that is going well around you, and don't hold it all inside. Express it. Say thank you. Share what you enjoy, not what you dislike. Be brave and vulnerable in sharing what makes you smile. Initially, if people aren't used to this, it may be off-putting or make them uncomfortable. They may even tease or laugh at you. Disregard that. I know it's hard to do, but what it really does, if you are brave enough to keep doing this, it's going to show you who will continue to show up with you and appreciate what you're doing. And it will let those other people know who aren't comfortable doing that they probably don't want to hang around you anymore, because you're not going to be belittled by them. You're not going to let their belittling bring you down. So it actually helps you figure out who to expend your energy with. And again, it's going to take time initially, and it will be hard at first, but eventually you start realizing, I'm not going to hang out with you anymore. You're a bully who's very insecure about something, and I'm not going to be your psychologist to figure you out. But again, sometimes people just need someone like you to be brave, and then they feel comfortable doing the same thing. So don't let them go too quickly, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But this is an example of how you elevate. You're not only elevating it for yourself, you're elevating it for the people around you. You're letting them feel safe to love life. Number 4, slow down when you eat your meals. Make them an opportunity to connect and refrain from watching the clock. I want to share an example of this because this happened recently, and I was so grateful for this. My dear friend Veronique, who I know many of you may know, I've talked about her on the blog. She is an interior designer here in Bend who works with European textiles, and she helped me with my bedroom. She's helped me with the office chair that I sit in taping this podcast to help me reupholster this. It was a consignment find, and she helped me find the right upholstery to recover it to match my wallpaper, and so many other decor details she's helped me with. But over the years, I've known her for 6 years, we've become friends, and she so kindly took me out for a birthday dinner last week. We went to a new restaurant here in Bend, an authentic Italian restaurant, and she had become quite well acquainted with the owner because her business is right next door. So she had watched the business come to fruition. And anyway, so she took me to dinner, and I did not look at the clock once. And by the time I got into my car to go home, we had spent nearly 4 hours talking, eating, sipping wine, champagne, nothing in excess, just taking in the energy of the room. It did feel more European in the sense there was a lot of people in the room, and we were just all chattering and talking, and the wait staff was lovely. If you live in Bend and you're listening, or you want to come to Bend and you're going to come to Bend, go to Nome, Nome. It's a brand new Italian restaurant. Highly, highly recommend it. Anyway, but this is an example of the meals, and it doesn't have to be those kind of extraordinary moments. But for me and Veronique, it was just dinner between friends. And when I'm at home and I'm having dinner, same thing. I sit down, prepare a placemat, and I look forward to the meals that I'm going to make. I enjoy making them, and I really enjoy savoring them. And it actually doesn't make, and doing so actually doesn't make the cleanup so bad, because you know you've enjoyed the meal and it was done for a lovely purpose. So it's all about intention. So anyway, I've gone on too long about that one. That's number 4. 5, grow and nurture a garden. We're coming up on spring here. And I actually was out in my garage, in my potting table area yesterday, cleaning it up, getting it prepped, getting the grow lights going, and I'm starting to plant some of my seeds. And, gardening is a process, a journey. It's not about the outcome. And you do want to, enjoy that journey. But just watching every single approach of a seed germinating and then growing and maturing just being in awe of that, being in awe of the seasons, letting yourself be in awe of that and not taking it for granted. That's how we elevate the ordinary to extraordinary, by appreciating all that we may have previously taken for granted. Number 6, take on the serious responsibility of caring for a pet and nurture them as you would yourself or a child. I thought about this yesterday morning as I was brushing Norman's teeth. We do this a couple times a week, and he does have his teeth professionally cleaned, but that was something that I wasn't taught growing up. We didn't brush our dog's teeth, and I didn't understand, when I first learned that I should be having my dog's teeth cleaned when I became a doggy mama. I was like, oh my gosh, that completely makes sense. Why wasn't I doing this? But I think it's this awareness of taking on that responsibility, as I described, a serious responsibility of taking care of a pet. They are entirely, as we all know, entirely dependent upon you. They are not toys. They are not accessories to our lives. They're not show pieces. They are heartbeats. They are souls. And, that regular exercise, create healthy routines that they get used to, and they can then trust you. I think that's one thing that I'm really enjoying as my dogs got older and are getting older, is that the trust is so deep. And that takes time. Number 7, make and revel in daily, weekly, or monthly rituals. Make them special and important, and hold them firm as you would an appointment. And I'm talking like things that the outside world would not see as a special thing. It might be, the return of your favorite program, and you make a designated time that you're going to sit down and take that in. Maybe you make yourself a great meal. Maybe, whatever it is, you make sure that time is sacred. It might be another ritual with regards to, the start of the school year or the start of a new week, something that happens every single week. And you hold space in your life to do what you need to do. And it might be just sitting still, or it could be going on a nice long walk in a particular park that you love, that you only go once a week, but the favorite time of day to go. Favorite day of the week to go. Rituals that are seemingly ordinary, but they're special to you. Protect them. There's no one else has to agree with you. Honor that. If it lifts you up, if it fuels you, bring that into your life. Number 8, engage in one activity at a time. So this is just a reminder to not multitask. And this becomes more difficult the busier our lives get. I was talking with someone that I see on a regular basis, an acquaintance, and she has a young family, and she works as well, as does her husband. And she said, our schedules feel like they were before the pandemic, and I don't like it. And again, it's not just her schedule. She has to, juggle her kids' schedules and their passions and their interests and their involvement. And I could hear the disappointment in her voice. There was a yearning, a longing to get back to the slower pace. Not the exact slower pace, but maybe a balance between the two. And I just listened. Because I'm not going to give someone advice whose life is not in any way like myself, and she's having to juggle so many other people's priorities as well. And that's the key. You're not just dealing with your own priorities. If you have a family, you're dealing with other priorities. But I think that's the key. What are the priorities, and when do too many priorities start to decrease the quality of life for anyone or everyone? And that's where you compromise as well, so that everyone has a priority met, but maybe they don't get all their priorities. And I know that's tricky, and that changes and it evolves as people grow and the kids grow up and chapters change, and but it's this idea of letting go of multitasking. It's easier to do when you have fewer things you have to get done. So it's a matter of truly being honest with yourself. With regards to number 8 and 9, they're kind of a couple here. I said that 8 was engage in one activity at a time. Number 9 is give yourself permission to not be engaged in any activity at all for a period of time each day. In other words, just be still, rest, relax. Give yourself that. It's powerful. Number 10, quality ingredients, seasonal fare for delicious everyday meals. When you do that, when you focus on quality ingredients, focus on what's seasonally available, Your budget actually becomes less because if you're buying in season, they probably didn't travel as far. You're also going to be using fewer ingredients because they're going to be of higher quality and have all sorts of flavor. And then it's going to satiate your appetite, so you're going to become full more naturally, and you will get what your body needs and not overeat, so you feel good. That's elevating the everyday as well, because every day we have to eat. Number 11, become a student of the mind. Exercise, thereby strengthen it regularly. Put yourself in the driver's seat. So emotions that spring up due to events out of your control don't derail your day, your relationships, your life. As you know, all emotions are evanescent. We talk about mind mastery, I guess we could call it, a lot here on the blog. So there are a handful of podcast episodes you can explore. Just type in Master the Mind or Mastering the Mind on the blog and they'll pop up. But this is a huge component to being able to elevate the everyday. If you're not a master of your mind, then it's almost impossible to elevate it because you're just being run by the outside world and other people. You're not in control of things that you can control. And it's just something to really investigate. It takes time to become a master of your mind, but when you get it, we've gotten to that point where it's a toned muscle, it's just a matter of maintaining that muscle. And yes, my meditation is part of that strengthening, that daily strengthening, but so too is practice. So when you're in certain situations, how do you navigate it? How do you hold yourself? How do you respond? Do you react or do you respond? So that's number 11. Number 12, fall in love with reading and have something to read that holds you in the pages for pleasure or for learning something new and deepening your knowledge. I think this one is fairly straightforward, but as just as an example, in this month's A Cup of Moments, which was one of the longest ones we've had, I just thoroughly enjoyed sitting down and chatting, and I really enjoyed the conversation in the comments. But I sat in front of my bookshelf because, in all honesty, as I share in my book, The Road to Le Papillon, without books, I wouldn't know how to cultivate a life of true contentment. The books have taught me so much by means of teaching me things I wasn't taught, either by models with regards to people in my life or in the classroom as a student. But it was my curiosity that drew me to these books, my asking questions, how do I, what does this mean? And I continue to just follow that curiosity. I think if you do continue to learn and be a student of life, you will elevate the quality of your everydays. Apply what you learn, question what you learn. Don't always just follow. Obviously, we don't want to be followers. The critical thinking mind is absolutely a key here. But the more information you have to get behind the scenes and really dissect, the more information you have, the more you know, and the less you have to just sit back and wonder. And that's really powerful to living a good life. And last but not least, 13, thoughtfully and patiently curate a home, a wardrobe, and a routine for your days that is an investment that will last and nurture your priorities. Now, this can mean a lot of different things. And why I mention patience is just taking my house, for example. I'm 43. I've lived, obviously grew up with my parents in their houses. We had 2 different houses. When I was a young girl, we lived in another house. And then when I was older, they moved and built their own house, which took years for them to build, by the way. It wasn't until I was 1 year before I graduated that it was entirely done. But still, there was something that I was picking up. I was learning. They were styling their house to how they liked to live and how we lived as a family. And so I took not necessarily what they did, but how they did this, and I applied it to my life. And so I would go, from all the different apartments you live in as you go through college, and through my younger adult years, as I went through my first couple jobs as a teacher, from Nevada to Portland to Pendleton and then to Bend. Also, when I travel, I take in the exteriors and the interiors of houses, and what made me feel at home, felt cozy, functional, but also warm and welcoming. And so I took all that information, there's the patience part, and then I took the knowledge of who I am and what I've been learning about myself, which changes, but there's a core component when you know who you are that's key and helpful then to just make decisions about your home. And I started to apply it these last 2 years as I customized Le Papillon. And this is a small house, but it is every nook and corner, minus the guest bedroom. I haven't really done anything with the guest bedroom except for use it as storage through different projects. But that'll be the next project, and I'm looking forward to that. But it really is a home tailored to how I enjoy living, what I need to be rejuvenated, how I need to function for my work, but also my personal life. And so it's been an investment, but it's one that's going to be with me for a very, very long time. And because it's going to elevate my everydays, it was worth it because I can function smoothly through my days, getting what I need done, relaxing in a way that's truly reinvigorating so I can start the new day fresh and fully re-energized. And same thing with our wardrobe. It'll be edited as we go, but the fundamentals, the core components, if we invest well, we don't have to get a lot of things. And then we feel good in what we wear. And then we present the best self to the world that we possibly can. And we forget about what we're wearing because we know we feel comfortable, and we then engage fully with whatever the situation is. And the same goes with our routine. If you know yourself, it takes time to get to know yourself, but you honor who that is, then you create a routine of work, rest, play, curious pursuits, social engagement, solitary time. You cultivate that. It takes time, and it might take investment in figuring out what you need. You might have to go to a counselor. You might have to stand up for yourself with some people. So that's the investment part. Sometimes it's monetarily, sometimes it's emotions. But hopefully it's all for the good. And when you do that, your everydays elevate. Each of the ideas suggested are merely a sampling of how we can elevate the ordinary every day to something extraordinary to experience each day. If you have been a longtime reader of the blog or a longtime listener of this podcast, you know that nearly all of the content you find shares inspiration, ideas, and examples of how to do exactly this. Live an extraordinary life in the ordinary moments. A key component, something we've tangentially talked about in a variety of ways, is to understand why we or you place so much value on the extraordinary moments that are celebrated by outside sources. So the awards, the status symbols, the life markers set by society that one must achieve. While we are social creatures and we want to feel included, we want to feel seen, appreciated, and applauded and accepted, when we seek out healthy sources for each of these, this is something we've talked about with regards to David Rico's 5 key A's and a healthy adult relationship. We've talked about this in episode 287. If we find healthy sources for being appreciated, for being applauded, accepted, and seen, then we can savor them in our everyday lives. So often we seek something outside of ourselves that is already within each of us or capable for each of us to nurture with those in our everyday lives already. When we discover how rich we already are for living an extraordinary life in our everydays, the supposed grand achievements become, I would say, less tempting to pursue, especially if doing so takes us away from what we know is quite special and we are quite fortunate to have: healthy, loving relationships, a career or calling that fulfills us, a home that gives us safety, shelter, and security, a community that is at peace, small and yet significant opportunities to learn and grow. When we choose to embrace the choice of living extraordinarily in our everydays, as Thoreau advises, it becomes easier to hold ourselves in the present moment. And because we are doing our best in those moments that each day offers, we go to bed each night more at peace, and thus slumber is deeper, more nourishing, which makes the new day that we awake to full of all the more potential to be extraordinary all over again. The cycle feeds itself, and we hold the key in how we hold ourselves, what we notice, how we engage, what we engage in, what we let go of, etc. So choose to expend energy on the things that bring value. Find strength to let go of unhelpful, unnecessary, or detrimental tasks, habits, or relationships, and your life will begin to feel quite extraordinary. Now, if you want to take a look at those pictures I was talking about, or any of the links to those other episodes I shared, or just to take a look at the transcript, although I did kind of talk freely there for a while when I was talking about the list, check out the show notes, the simplyluxuriouslife.com/podcast 324. I also have links to my new book, The Road to Le Papillon. You can also find it on Amazon and wherever books are sold online. And you can also peek inside the book. There's a 15-minute video, as I mentioned, with Norman and I, and we walk you through it. But there's also a peek inside on Amazon if you click See Inside. I also want to share, if you're curious about the publishing process, because a lot of people have asked about that and why I choose to publish as a self-published author, although it's a misnomer because there are so many talented people that I work with in order to bring the book that I envisioned in my mind to you. I could not do this on my own. Please check out the post Peek Inside the Book, because it is a fortunate opportunity that I get to self-publish. It's a dare, it's a risk, because there's a lot of investment up front. But I'm really happy with how this book turned out. Sarah Locker's illustrations, from the cover to the 13 illustrations inside, to the editing, the process and how long that takes, to the web design, who put the cover design together. There's just so many talented people that I feel fortunate to work with. And I walk you through all of that if you're curious how it works in that post titled A Peek Inside. This was posted on March 1st. I'd like to introduce you to two sponsors for today's podcast. And then I have a Francophile petit plaisir and slightly an Anglophile one as well that I think you're going to love. I'll be right back in about 2.5 minutes. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. A lot of us will drop anything to go help someone we care about. We'll go out of our way to treat other people well. But how often do we give ourselves the same treatment? This month, BetterHelp Online Therapy wants to remind you that you matter just as much as everyone else does, and therapy is a great way to make sure you show up for yourself. I personally can say that I have benefited from seeing a counselor. She has enabled me to do just that. Honor my true self, figure out what direction I want to go in my life, and then help me build the skills necessary to live the life I want to live, to engage with the world the way I want to engage. BetterHelp is online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can be matched with a therapist in under 48 hours. Give it a try and see why over 2 million people have used BetterHelp Online Therapy. As a Simple Sophisticate listener, and this show being sponsored by BetterHelp, you, the listener, will receive 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/simple. That's BetterHelp, BetterHelp.com/simple for 10% off your first month. The arrival of spring brings out all different possibilities for what we get to do, and that takes me outside. Why do flowers bloom? How do caterpillars turn into butterflies? Why is the day longer? KiwiCo delivers monthly science and art projects that celebrate a child's natural curiosity and an adult's, and sparks a love for lifelong learning. With KiwiCo, you can explore different STEAM topics each month, ranging from rainbows to rocket ships and everything in between. Discover subscription lines for kids of all ages, ranging from infants and preschoolers all the way to teens. Grown-ups are welcome to join in the fun as well. The project I received, How to Build a Lamp and Then You Have a Lamp When You're Done, just made me realize how hands-on can not only be fun, but provide functionality in our lives. Do your part to encourage children to be innovators and creative thinkers. They won't believe what they can build and accomplish with KiwiCo. And there's something for kids of all ages. Kiwi does the legwork for you so you can spend quality time tackling projects together or with yourself as an adult, just to keep your mind challenged, active, and pursuing something that piques your curiosity. Step into spring and celebrate the season of discovery with a KiwiCo subscription. Get 30% off your first month plus free shipping on any Curate line with code SIMPLE at kiwico.com. That's 30% off your first month at kiwico.com. Don't forget to use the promo code SIMPLE to save 30% off your first month. So this week's petit plaisir is murder in Provence. And yes, if you follow me on Instagram last week, you know I am loved. I've already finished the 3 episodes in the first season. I loved this series, and I do hope it has a second season, which I think it will. Murder in Provence is a new murder series on BritBox. If you have the BritBox subscription, you probably have seen it pop up. Why I'm so excited about this is that it is based on the books by longtime friend of this podcast, the Simple Sophisticate, ML Longworth. She has been a guest on this show 3 different times, and I've linked all the episodes on the show notes today. She's also been profiled in 2 additional blog posts. One was a detailed Q&A, and the other was a detailed photo tour of Aix-en-Provence. And her Provincial Murder series or mystery series is a 10-book series. The 10th book comes out in October that focuses or is led by the duo Verlac and Bonnet. And they are at the helm of solving the crimes in and around Aix-en-Provence. And this series just began on March 1st with 3 episodes titled Murder in Provence. Each episode is an hour and a half long, and each is based on one of Mary Lou's books. Now, I've detailed which book is which episode. Like I said, I loved it. First of all, the setting and the videography capturing the beauty of Provence will take your breath away. And as ML's series is food forward, there is rarely a scene, unless they are at a murder scene, that does not include food. From Roger Allam, who plays Antoine Verlac, cooking in his kitchen. And by the way, his kitchen is in this beautiful apartment that is located actually in a different place than where Mary Lou put it in the novel. So in the video or TV series, they place his apartment at the very high-end location of Place des Albertas. And it's that famous 3-sided square with a fountain in the middle where 2 of the sides of the buildings, the facades, have been remodeled and 1 has not. And I love that they keep that visual where you have the juxtaposition of the remodeled side and the one that's not. Anyway, I have a picture of that. You can check it out on the tour that she took me on Aix-en-Provence. I have a picture of exactly that. But it does exist, and that's where they put his apartment. He actually did not live there in the book series. She actually puts him someplace else in Aix-en-Provence. It's close by, but it's not the same place. And I show you where that is in the tour that she took me on at Aix-en-Provence, and I provide a link to that. Detailed post, all sorts of pictures. Anyway, so you always have him cooking in his kitchen. It's a beautiful apartment. And then they're always dining at the local brasserie, which in the film, the brasserie that they're always at is a set that they taped things in England that were not on set in Aix-en-Provence. ML actually sets it in a very popular brasserie. And it's a place that if you ever get to go to Aix-en-Provence, please go to this bar. It's called Le Grillon. And it's actually where I got to meet ML in my first visit to Aix. She met me at this brasserie, Le Grillon. And I have pictures of that as well in the tour. And they did not use that in the film. But they still have the characters at this brasserie all the time. And it's just fun to always see them with a glass of wine, with some food, with the waitstaff, with the bistro chairs. You really are in France. You really, really feel like you're in France, even when they're on set. Anyway, so you have Roger Allam, who plays Antoine, and then you have Nancy Carroll, who stars as Marine Bonnet. And I cannot speak more highly of her portrayal of Marine, who I feel plays her to a T. Except, and if you've seen the series and you've read the novels, you know what I'm going to say here. Marine is actually a very good cook in the novels. She loves food just as much as Antoine. In fact, that is probably one of the many things that they have in common that I was surprised they took out. But I also think that, again, they're trying to appeal to a broader audience. And there's a couple of things they changed, and I think it was primarily for that reason. So she's not a great cook in the series. In fact, they make a point of talking about how she's not a great cook, and Antoine is the food lover. The overall casting is fun, thoughtful, diverse, and while, as I mentioned, there were changes made, the same energy in each relationship that ML created is present. Marine's mother, played by Patricia Hodge, here's one change. She's widowed in the TV series. In the books, her husband, Marin's father, is still alive. However, again, knowing the audience and probably wanting to have a breadth of different relationship situations is a smart idea. You already have a strong couple with Marin and Antoine that respect each other, that are very academic, that are very loving, and so too were Marin's parents. So I think if they would have had two of those, it would have been unnecessary. And so we wanted to have this additional woman who is of a certain age, but also strong, intelligent, set in her beliefs, and they do not change that as well. Hodge is fantastic at conveying the energy and ideology that Longworth created in the novels. Keelia Settle plays a key reoccurring main role as Helene Pollock. She is the police partner of Verlac and trusted confidant of him, and her chemistry with Antoine, Roger Allam, works very well. Now, let's take a listen to the trailer for Murder in Provence.
Judge.
How's your weekend going so far?
You're about to spoil it, aren't you?
There's been a murder at the university.
Do we know who the victim is?
He was a pain in the arse. People are usually more than meets the eye.
We have at least one suspect.
I never told anyone about it.
It's very Agatha Christie.
Oh, sod
We've got another one.
Another what?
Murder. 2 murders in the space of 24 hours.
Are you all right? I'm just a bit stunned.
All we need is a serial killer on our hands. Keep me up to speed on developments.
I just had a vision of you in Lycra.
And now you wish you hadn't.
Correct.
We'll find a glass of rosé and take the edge off the horror.
I blame American TV.
Oh, God, it's exhausting.
As you can hear, there's murder, but there's also humor. And it's important to point out that the screenplay writer that adapted the novels into this series is someone who wrote for Downton Abbey. So you're in for a treat when you tune in. If you have read the entire series, and as I mentioned, 9 books have been released so far. A 10th one is coming out on October 4th, and I've included that book on today's show notes. I'll talk about it in a second. You know that Verlac and Bonnet are younger in the books than how they are depicted on the screen in this new series. At first, when I heard who the actors were, I was like, wait a second, that's not how old they are in the book. How can they do that? I wasn't sure how this would work, but I was quickly convinced they made an awesome decision. I think it actually will work far better. Number one, it's different than in other series of cozy mysteries that are out there now. And I think it's just unique. It has a more modern approach to their relationship that I welcome, and especially compared to other cozy mysteries. Not all, but most. It kind of goes along the lines of the French cozy mysteries, more so than the British. And I have to say, I've watched a lot of different cozy mysteries, maybe too many, but I don't think that's possible. And I think they're one of my favorite sleuthing duos of all the British and French mysteries that I watch, which is hard to do because there are some awesome pairings out there. I think they just nailed it. The crew filmed for 3 weeks in and around Aix-en-Provence and Cassis this past September. And prior to that, they spent 8 to 9 weeks on the set in England filming the other scenes. I took a moment to correspond a little bit with Mary Lou M.L. Longworth just recently to see what her thoughts were about the series because they gave her an advanced viewing of all the episodes. And she said she was quite pleased and thought the chemistry between Allam and Carol worked very well. On that point especially, I agree. I did interview her. If you have been listening to the podcast this past year, you know that ML was on this show in episode 310, and we talk about the upcoming series, Murder in Provence, and she talks about her excitement about the cast, because she knew who the 2 leads were, and she was really excited about that, knowing who they were. And she specifically was excited about the producers behind this, the executive producers. She has high respect for who those 2 women were or are. And she talks about those as well. So if you haven't already, listen to episode 310. We talk about this series. She talks about the episodes and what they're based on and much more. And of course, we talk about food as well. There's a great interview in the Daily Mail with Mary Lou, and I link it on today's show notes. But you might be wondering, because if you've watched it, you know that it's in Provence, it's in France, and these two characters have lived in France their whole lives, but they're speaking English. It's a fair question, but because Mary Lou wanted this to be the way it is, but she does speak about this in episode 203 of this show. That was our first podcast episode that she was on the show, and she speaks about it in that interview I mentioned with the Daily Mail. That, she loves British mysteries. She's a fan of Agatha Christie. And what she saw with regards to Oxford being a big legal hub or a legal university, a lot of big legal universities set there, is that X is very much the same, but the French counterpart of that. And it's also the hub of culture and food in France, the South especially. And she's been living in Provence for now over 25 years. Specifically, she and her family lived in Aix for many, many years until they moved outside of the city. And so she has that firsthand knowledge. She has a love for mystery telling, and she's good at it. In fact, the apartment she lived in, or they lived in Aix-en-Provence, is what she based Marin's apartment on. And I take a picture of that, the exterior of the apartment in Aix, the actual apartment, in the walking tour she took me on. So be sure to take a peek at that post. Okay. Now, just want to run through the 3 episodes in case you want to read the books that are tied with them. 2 of the episodes are very close to the actual novels. I was really impressed. And again, I've read them a while ago, so I might be missing a few or more things, but the first 2 were very, very closely adapted. So episode 1, the premiere episode, is actually based on book number 2, Murder in the Rue de Mars. That one is the first episode. It's a very strong episode. You get to know all the characters very well, and the relationship between Antoine and Marin is very clearly communicated. Then you have the second episode, which is based on the very first book, Death at the Chateau Bremont. And again, they actually go to a provincial home, and it's beautiful as far as the land and the size and the windows and those classic blue shutters. It's run down, but still it's beautiful. And then the third episode, I just watched this Saturday night, is loosely based on Death in the Vines. So it's well done. It's a great episode. But again, if you've read the book, you know that there are things that are slightly different. But it's a good episode. And just the fact that the production of this series began with the actual first 3 novels tells me that they are cautiously hopeful that this series will continue. I mean, there's 7 more books they can pull from because there's 10 total in the series that she's written. And ML usually releases 1 book a year. And now that she's retired from teaching, she was teaching writing in Paris for some time. She is wholly focused on her writing, and that's something we actually talk about in a previous episode, and I linked that episode. That's our second episode she was on the show. And I just look forward to each new book. October 4th cannot come fast enough. And that new book is titled Disaster at the Vendôme Theater. And she talks about what this book is about in episode 310. So if you're curious, please listen to episode 310. She does talk about what this book is all about. All right. I've talked about and gushed about and fangirled far too much and too long on this. I hope you've enjoyed this week's Petit Plaisir, where each week ideas are shared to make the everyday all the more enjoyable. Tune in at the end of each episode where I'll recommend a book, a film, a show, a recipe, anything that is a simple pleasure to satiate your sophisticated taste. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. I do hope you've enjoyed it. With regards to the Petit Plaisirs, I've shared and linked all of the episodes that ML Longworth was on the show, as well as the Q&As and the walking tour of Aix-en-Provence. And you can also find all the news and links to shop and explore the Simply Luxurious Life's 3rd book, The Road to la Papillon, Daily Meditations on True Contentment. I hope March is off to a wonderful start, and I'll be back on March 21st with a brand new episode. Until then, stop by the blog for the regular weekly inspiration. Bonne journée. Thank you for tuning in to the Simple Sophisticate podcast, where intelligent living is paired with signature style. For more ideas and inspiration throughout the week, visit the blog The Simply Luxurious Life with the shortened URL tsll.co. For more in-depth exploration of how to cultivate your own unique, simply luxurious life, be sure to pick up my first 2 books. Each are available in hardback, paperback, ebook, and and at Audible for audio listening. The first is titled Choosing the Simply Luxurious Life, and the second, Living the Simply Luxurious Life. And look for a third book to be released in the spring of 2022. Readers can now join the more intimate Simply Luxurious Life international community by becoming members of the blog, which provides ad-free unlimited reading and access to exclusive content such as each month's A Cup of Moments video chat, tours of my home, Le Papillon, the regular monthly post, What Made Me Smile, and Saturday Ponderings, as well as the opportunity to enter all of the giveaways during French and British weeks. To stay caught up on all things Simply Luxurious, the podcast, blog post, and the cooking show, as well as receive exclusive news and an extra dose of inspiration to jumpstart your new month, subscribe to the Simply Luxurious Life's free monthly newsletter, which arrives on the last day of each month. And there's a weekly newsletter, a favorite of listeners and readers, which is also free and arrives each Friday to keep you caught up on the recent weekly posts on the blog. Enjoy with a hot cup of tea or a cup of morning coffee and stay in the know about all things Simply Luxurious. Thank you for tuning in today, and look for 2 new episodes of this podcast each month on the 1st and 3rd Monday. To be alerted to new episodes and when they become available, follow on Instagram, the Simple Sophisticate podcast, and only the news about this show will be shared. Until next time, I'm your host, Shannon Ables. Bonne journée.